Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We are
Hello,
here.
welcome back. Yes.
I don't know why you're frozen for me, Martine.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Welcome, everybody. We
I
are
will not
in
dance.
we are in a webinar format. And so right now you don't have access to your camera nor your microphone. We are recording this event to be able to offer it to other people. We're so excited to be able to formally launch after 3 years of working very hard on this project for K4, K5. We have people from all over, from the English sector, a little bit from the French sector. We have from the public school system, from the private school system. And so welcome everybody. Obviously, K4 and K5 children are not necessarily a concern, but an interest to all of us, which is why we decided to put together this project. I will share screen to show a few slides. We have an hour together. And during this hour, we're going to present the project a little bit, but I do want to leave some room for questions at the end. And we're going to take a few moments in between to peruse the website. I want to show you what is where, so you can have an idea of the different sections. So I'm going to share my screen. Right.
We're very
Wonderful.
excited to be sharing this with you today. It's
Absolutely. So Martine, please feel free to jump in wherever you see fit.
Thank you.
Um, Alrighty. And so I thought it would be a good place to start to talk about why is it that we spent three years on this project. What was the purpose? Where was the need? Where does this idea come from? Um, as you may know, our Center of Excellence focuses on supporting schools and boards in terms of student with needs, whether it's emotional needs, social needs, behavioral needs. And so we've had a lot of requests and concerns from different schools, from different staff members and board members about all of the externalizing behaviors that they're seeing in their 4 and their 5-year-olds in their schools. Whether it's, children that are having a hard time adapting to kindergarten, that are having a hard time staying in class, that will run out of class into the building or sometimes even out of the building, seeing all sorts of emotions, meltdowns, and whatnot. And so there has been some concern in terms of how do we support these little guys that are, excited to be there, but at the same time are popping up all over the place. And so that has been one major concern. It actually has been in the last few years as well, one of the ministry's mandates, because the Ministry of Education in Quebec also saw the importance of emphasizing the support for our little ones. And so it's not just something that has been a request, it's also been in the mind of the ministry. The other piece that we've noticed, especially during COVID, was the fact that it was very difficult to get staff that is necessarily trained specifically with early childhood. Some staff came from high school, some staff came and were not formally trained. And so, it's not the same to work with a 4-year-old than it is to work in high school or in even grade one. Or 4-year-olds and even 5-year-olds are very different from one another, which is why we wanted in some of the documentation to explain, if you're working with 4-year-olds versus 5-year-old, is there a difference? And yes, there is. And so how
Mhm.
should we focus differently in supporting these different age groups? And of course, in terms of being equipped, what should be our expectations? How do we adjust our expectations? How do we set up the schedule of the day, the routine, the setup of the classroom, in terms of different types of activities? How much do we push or not push and so forth? So there's been a lot of questions around that. As some of you who know myself and or Martine, both of us have been trained with the Neufeld material that is very much ingrained in the developmental approach. And also the neuroscience behind that, the attachment practices, the play-based practices, and so forth. And so you will notice if you've already gone to peruse the CBM website that all of the material that we present is permeated with this lens. And not just because we believe in it, but because, we've seen time and time again, working with schools and boards, the benefits and the impact of being able to honor the rhythm of children that are 4 and 5 year olds, and being able to come alongside their rhythm rather than tugging and pulling and pushing and having
Mhm.
expectations that are not aligned with where they're at developmentally. And of course, the last piece on this slide is the fact that CBM years ago now, this was Martine's first initiative a few years ago. We had put together a pyramid of intervention, which was initially designed for elementary, and then we had tweaked one for high school. But time and time again, staff kept on saying, well, how do I apply this to kindergarten? We don't feel that the practices are quite adapted to our clientele. And so we thought it made sense to be able to create one specifically separate from the elementary and the high school for our 4 and 5 year olds. And so that's where the project began 3 years ago, where we wanted to look at adapting that pyramid. And then over time, we say, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to dug in a bit deeper here and a bit there, and maybe
Mhm.
we need this resource and that resource. And so it kind of grew and grew. Martin, feel free if there's anything you want to
I think
add.
what I would just add there, Catherine, is really how, with all of our knowledge and experience and the people that we have tapped into for this entire project, is that it's the toolkit you will see is a culmination of bringing the attachment, the developmental, the neuroscience, and bringing that theory to application of how can it be done in a fun, playful way to meet the needs of the kids within the classroom. And I think that's really what we're distilling here and giving you something you'll see very concrete that you can work with hands-on with the kids.
Thank you so much. And so we just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview in the last 3 years, what it is that we have been up to, and how this project evolved. And so the first year was thinking about who in the network that we have could be so helping our Center of Excellence put together this material. Because although Martin and I have experience working with little ones, and working with staff that are supporting little ones, we really thought it would be central and needed and necessary to have those that are both directly with the kids, so the teachers, K4, K5 teachers, but also the consultants and professionals that specialize themselves in early childhood and are there to support the teachers. And so 3 years ago, we had put together a committee of professionals and consultants that came together to help us develop and adapt the pyramid of interventions for K4, K5. So that's where we began. And at the same time, those individuals that helped us also surveyed the teachers that they work with, the schools, the board, the families, and so forth. Where are the challenges? Where are the needs? How, what's the objectives here in putting together this material? And then also, after establishing that portrait of those needs in reality, that's specific to the preschool context, what is the objective that we want to achieve through this initiative? So that's more or less what we worked on year one back in 2022. And then the following year, no, sorry, 2 years ago, after we adapted the pyramid for preschool, of course, we wanted to share it. We wanted to get feedback from people. And then from there, as we were talking with different people, we realized that the pyramid, and I'll show you the pyramid when we get onto visiting the website. It wasn't enough just these 3 pages of documents. We needed much more explanation. And so from there grew what we call these annex documents. It's these 1 or 2 pagers where we talk about a certain topic or a certain theme one step further. So, for example, looking at attachment rituals, how do we, with the whole class, to looking at in those that need more targeted support in subgroups to those that need more individualized support one-to-one, how do we adjust our attachment rituals? Same thing with in terms of the adult posture. And so when I'm managing my class, how should I present myself as the adult in charge versus when I'm with a small group of kids and one-to-one with a highly challenging child? how do I stand if the child reacts, if the child pushes back, if the child is resistant or so forth, or has a meltdown? How do we best approach this? And so we started putting together these annex documents. Um, and then, of course, we thought, well, let's not just develop in English. Of course, a lot of our schools, although in the English system, have French immersion classes. And so we need to have some of this documentation in French. I actually had the privilege last year to present this initiative to the Ministry of Education, some of my colleagues, my equivalent on the French side, and they were all really, really excited to have access to this material in French. So we made sure to translate all of what we could, and then we wanted to make sure that all of this was available online, because even if Martine and I, at the time could reach people at Riverside, or a few different boards, we really wanted to make sure that everybody could have access to this easily at your fingertips. And so we
Mhm.
decided to include this on the website, so people would have access to this very easily. And in a moment, I will be able to have you visit the website so you can see the different sections if you haven't already seen it. Now, last year, I had the pleasure of having Martine come back from retirement. As some of you may not know, Martine had been on retirement for a few years now. And as we were looking into developing this project even further, was really, really happy that Martine joined us last year. And we worked very closely all year with K4, K5 teachers that were selected at Riverside. And I also worked indirectly with teachers at EMSB, both English and French, K4 and K5, and really having them try out some of these activities in class, seeing what works, what doesn't, going back to the drawing board, getting their ideas, their creativity. And so it's been a wonderful experience. I don't know, Martine, if you want to add a bit more about that.
Well, I think I came back to play, Catherine, but it was really enjoyable. It was a lot of work. It was very creative. We thought we were going to have a project of a, certain number of books, like 12, 13, and we ended up with 33. So needless to say, we were very inspired. Teachers were inspired and excited, and it just gave us a lot more creative energy to create and to make more things, to really provide lots of resources for teachers K4, K5. So I won't hold you back. I want us to move further.
This is great. And so basically this initiative has two parts. The first part is the pyramid of support with all of the annexes and so forth. And the second piece, which is what we really focused on last year, was the toolkit for teachers for emotional and social development through stories and whatnot. And so I'm very excited to be able to show that to you. But before we move on to that piece, I just want to touch on a few points before we get there. I wanted to kind of highlight really clearly the objectives behind the initiative. Why is it not, above and beyond the fact that we wanted to share this with you, what is it that we hope you can get out of it? And so one of the objectives we had behind this project was to be able to establish a common framework. Because we know not everybody has the same level of training, or maybe have been exposed to different experiences and so forth. We wanted to be able to provide for staff, whether teachers, support staff, administrators, and whatnot, an equal playing field where you're on the same page, have a common language, a common vision about what does a 4-year-old typically look like, or a 5-year-old. What do they look like typically? What should we expect from them? What is considered normal? Although it may be noisy, chaotic, and so forth in the classroom, what is typical at that age group? And so that was one of the objectives. We wanted to kind of, in terms of your expectations, put them on the same playing field. The other piece is that we wanted to offer a tiered approach. And so thinking about universal best practices for all, which is so vital. And then building on top of that, the more targeted supports for those that need a little bit more support. And then added to that, the more individualized, intensive support for those tier 3 children. And so looking at how can we use the exact same practices, and not having to break our heads into doing something different for the whole class versus doing it for a few kids versus doing it for one child, being able to take the same resources, same practices, and just, adapting them a little bit to be able to cater to all of those adjusting needs. And then, of course, we wanted to make things tangible for you. We wanted you to have ready to use practical tools and resources. And so you'll see on the website all of the different materials that we have on there. And the last piece that our center will not do directly with you, but that we will be doing through the professionals and consultants at your board is how can we, as a stepping stone, be able to support you teachers. And so from the child being supported by you teachers, having the support staff that is part of that team, and of course the rest of the school team, having the professionals and the consultants supporting you, especially with tier 2 and tier 3, and then having us supporting them. And so really working at it together in that order.
I think, Catherine, we would also want to just mention that children are coming in right now. It's the startup of the school year. You're just meeting your students, and the key is really to take them where they're at, to take some time to get to know them, take them where they're at. We cannot rush the attachment process. We cannot rush their growth. And the key here is to be able to see where they're at. How can we best support them so that they can be their best with the learning and the growing that will unfold? We need to remember that they will unfold at different rhythms. But if a child is coming in and the transition in is challenging, it doesn't mean that the entire year will be challenging. And I think this is where the tiered approach can really be a great asset in helping, so that we're not discouraged with a rough start, because sometimes they just have it's a struggle, but it doesn't mean it will be all year, so that we can adjust interventions. But the key is the whole group can be worked with the same information, and like you said, some adaptations to help the children who need targeted and those who need very specific individualized support. But it can all flow together, and that's one of the biggest pieces of feedback we had from the cohort of teachers, was that the hope of seeing that everybody can benefit from the same information, but sometimes just presented slightly differently, or worked with support staff to give it a boost, or other professionals coming into the classroom.
Wonderful. I mentioned before that all the material is based on a neurodevelopmental approach that is based on play and attachment. These are our two resources, if you don't know them already, that we strongly recommend for you to have access to. One of them is a book written by Deborah McManera called Rest, Play, Grow. And this is a book that was geared towards parents, but really, I feel like school staff can also benefit from this, and it is focused on our preschoolers. And what's neat about this book is that each chapter kind of holds its own. You don't need to read from cover to cover, it follows you as you're searching for different, challenges and whatnot. It really helps to support in that way. And the other one is a DVD from the Neufeld Institute that is a wonderful recording, and it really is there to make sense of the preschooler from a developmental perspective, in terms of the way their brain is developing, and the fact that their brain is not yet fully developed. How does that impact in terms of their brain function, their executive functioning, their emotions, their behavior, and so forth? And it's a very clear recording. And so those two are there for you to access.
I think the key is also for people to understand, and to have like a deep understanding, that children are not doing certain things because they don't want to. It's their brain isn't developed
Right.
yet. It's developmentally, it's not even possible for certain things that sometimes people expect. So we need to be careful of what we're asking and expecting them to do. And sometimes developmentally, it's not even available to them yet. So it's not an issue of not wanting, it's an issue of not developed yet.
Exactly. And so, as I mentioned, the initiative has two sections. The first part was the pyramid with the annexes, and the second part was the teacher toolkit. And so we'll start with the pyramid of support. If ever you're interested in looking at the website at the same time as we're presenting, please feel free to do so. I put here the link. I believe that you guys can actually even click directly onto the slide as I'm presenting, and it will bring you to the page. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing this so I can show you the CBM web page. Great. So the link works. Thank you so much for letting me know. And so basically, before I jump there, what I want to say first is we're going to look at the the main documentation. So looking at tier 1 universal practices for all, looking at tier 2 practices for some, tier 3 practices for few, looking at the considerations. And you will notice on the website after these main documents at the top that we're going to be looking at all of the different sections that are built in within these documents. So we have the same themes that are covered in all of these documents, whether we're talking about for the whole class or for a few kids in a subgroup or one child one-to-one. It's the same practices, just adapted. So we're going to look at things like the physical and social setup of the space, the attachment rituals, the adult posture, the structure and routine in the day, talking about inclusive practices, play-based activities, downtime and respite, physical movement, outdoor opportunities. Here's the emotional and social development that we took one step further with the toolkit. Then there was things around the parameters around transitions, and the last one was planning and considerations. So I will stop sharing this so we can go onto the website together. Right here, stop sharing. And I will share my screen. So for those that may not be familiar with the CEBM website, I don't want to take for granted that you all know the website. The address is www.cebm.ca. And so this will take you to the main website of our center. And because we've got so many resources, we could not, on the English side, include the resources on the main website. We actually have a separate resource center. But for the French side right now, it is the same that is built in onto the web page. So before I get to the resource center, for those who want to look at it in French, you just click here to French. It will take you to the French web page. And then under practices, the second to last is the one for K4, K5 right here. So I will go back to the English and show you how to get there. So if you go to back to the English page, you click onto Resource Center, and it will open a second website that the colors are different. We did it on purpose so it doesn't look too confusing. And you will go underneath practices, and again, the second to last are the K4, K5 practices. So you've got the pyramid for all, for some, and for few in the considerations. And then the order that it is placed within the document is the rows on the web page. You'll see here that last year I did a presentation for teachers at English Montreal that I shared with everybody, which is kind of an intro to making sense of preschooler from a developmental lens. So you're welcome to listening to this recording, and you've got the handout there. And then you've got all of the annexes where we take it one step further. And so there's a lot. And, we're talking about the 4 versus the 5-year-old, looking at a child, whether 4 or 5, if their needs are universal, looking at tier 1, if their needs are more targeted, looking at tier 2, and if their needs are more individualized, looking at tier 3. How do we know, working with a child, that they situate themselves in terms of support at tier 1, 2, or 3? So we've put in this document preschooler traits at each tier, some little observables that you could pay attention to help you situate. Now, it's not a perfect system. Obviously, you need to see for that specific child, but it's a starting point, and it just helps to situate. And then from row to row to row, you've got, obviously I will not go through all of these documents. Martine loves to call this the buffet of resources, or the puzzle of a
Yes,
thousand pieces.
yes. So I have two analogies. This is like a whole buffet, which is it is absolutely impossible to ingest all at once. You need to come, I'm going to say shopping here, come viewing and select what meets your immediate need, and that you can grow from one area to another. But it's impossible to digest it all, but there is so much here. I do encourage you to come regularly because there's often additions. But at the same time, you will meet different needs and you will encounter different situations throughout the school year. So here's the benefit of having such a wide range of things that are available to you.
Wonderful. And so although we have a separate web page for emotional and social development, just for it to not to be too confusing, we added a link here to bring you to that resource. We won't look at the toolkit just yet. I think what I'm going to do just for a moment, because I know we've got a lot to cover, I'm going to click on the universal, because we are at the beginning of the school year, and starting the year right with universal best practices, always the right way to go. Even if you have a class with children with a lot of needs, all children benefit from tier one interventions, even
Mhm.
those that require that additional support. It's additional support above and beyond the tier one universal best practices. So the way that we divided these pyramids is that we, on the left-hand side of the document, list by theme, by category, the different classroom practices. And then this is what we changed from when we did this 3 years ago. Initially, we only had the list of practices. And then we used to get questions from staff about, like, I understand in theory what you're saying, but I'm not sure concretely, what does that look like? So we
Mm.
included a paragraph giving examples of what that practice could look like in its application. So you have, and we try to make it, clear. So you've got the main section that is highlighted in blue. Sometimes there's actually an annex. See, like for example, strong adult posture. I have it on the website, but you can click it from here. So if I want to look at what does my adult posture look like for the whole class, for that support for targeted and individualized, you've got examples. Obviously, we don't have time today to read through this. I will let you pick and choose the sections that speak to you short term, and
Mhm.
then you can build on that as we go. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what the document looked like. And the tier 2 and 3 is positioned the exact same way, and the sections are the same. They're just one step further in terms of intensified support.
I think, Catherine, we can also mention that you've been very intentional in the structure, the setup, so it would be similar, so it's easy to find the information.
Yeah.
You've also been intentional with the use of colors. So tier
Yes.
one is green, and
Yes.
so that everywhere that you see tier one, it will be in green. Everywhere you see tier two, it will be in blue, and the golden for tier three. So whenever there's another document, and you'll see others within the presentation, everything that is tier one, two, and three will be labeled. So there is consistency throughout to make it visually easier to track and to find. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so just to let you know that, it gives you some visual reference points to make it a little bit easier.
Wonderful. And then the last document at the end here called considerations, basically what this document is that as you are going through applying some of the practices, whether at tier one, at tier two, or at tier three, if there are certain concerns or questions, or you're applying something and you don't feel like it's going in the direction that you were envisioning, we included here a list of different elements to think about, or questions to ask yourself or to look into further, that maybe can help your reflection move along, and to help situate why is it that a specific situation may not be going quite in the direction you were imagining, given the practices you've tried. And so obviously, it's a starting point. It's not a perfect system. It doesn't cover every single different scenarios, but it's a framework. It's a guideline, and it just gives you a few ideas. And so again, I will let you take the time to peruse this document.
This is really helpful, Catherine, when people have they've started implementing interventions and they're anticipating certain progress and it's not happening. And sometimes we've missed on some variables that we didn't think could be so pertinent, on
Mm,
the amount of sleep a child has had, or changes in routine at home, or there's been a big event, somebody at home. So sometimes we miss a detail that can have a huge impact. So the considerations is really a piece to help extend that brainstorming.
absolutely. Before I forget and move on back to the PowerPoint, I wanted to mention that at the bottom of this section, and I also have it in the toolkit, we have a section dedicated for parents that you can share with parents. So one piece I wanted to mention today, in case you were not aware, because I started promoting it, but I'm not sure it got to you yet, is Martine and I have been working at putting together resources for the welcome at the beginning of the school year, your parent night. And so we did a quick short video capsule, both in English and in French. And this could be shown to the parents live in your classroom as you are introducing your classroom, or it could be that you just share the link with parents and they can watch that on their own at home. And so it is kind of 16 to 18-minute recording on key messages to think about as a parent to help their child start the year on the right foot, in terms of, play and rest and all sorts of different things that are in there. You wanted to say
And
something, Amber?
the key pieces that are mentioned here that we built the slides from are from the comments and requests and
Yes.
suggestions from teachers, the cohort of teachers that we worked with last year. And they were asking from us, can you support us in conveying these messages so they're hearing it, that it's not just from us, the teacher, the one teacher in the classroom, but it's really is, these are recommended practices, that these are these are good for everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
that the benefit of a parent working on this very much in collaboration with the school team can really, really help a child transition into kindergarten. So every information that's there is from that group and also was validated with them. So we're, like Catherine said, you can play this during your meet the parent night, meet the teacher night. And that can be a way of support. You can also give them printed copies of the handouts if you want. That's why
Mm-hmm.
they are there. And that parents don't need to do profuse note writing, because some will do, and some will sit back and listen comfortably. Others will start writing notes rather than really listening to the messages. So if you want to print those up and provide them to parents, then they will have those and they can just really sit back and take it in, and that you can then address questions or comments after the video. So we hope that's a helpful tool for those who would like to use it.
Absolutely. And along with the video capsule and the handout, we also developed these two infographics, one for emotional development, one for social development. We actually took the colors from the ministry program. And so we know that in the program, the five different domains, and so the emotion being the green and the social being the dark pink. And so we put together these 5 points. Again, these are kind of tidbits for parents on how to honor their child where they're at in terms of their emotion and their social development. So those are to share with parents as well. And of course, we had a buffet for teachers. We have a buffet for parents too. We don't suggest for you to share all of this with parents at once. It's going to be really
No, 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 no.
overwhelming.
It could be
Maybe you want
throughout the
to,
year. It could be that
yeah,
periodically I don't know, there's a theme, there's a recurring something that you're noticing happening in your class. Well, you could do a universal practice of printing something up or sending a link home to parents on a certain topic. So again, this is for you to be able to come see, pick and
yeah.
choose, and that, you could be then targeting some things that you can send some information home.
Exactly. And these are not things that we all developed. You may be familiar with some of these already. They actually belong to Naître et Grandir, which is a great resource for parents. And so those are there on the website. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this for a second so we can go back to the PowerPoint, just so we can move on to the second part. Share. All right. It's a different kind of sharing to share the PowerPoint, so I have to go back and forth. All right.
You've
So
got
we
this.
were resume. Here we go. And so what I think I mentioned this already at the beginning, but it's just a visual to kind of, to wrap up this section on the pyramid of support. The idea here, that we envision from the beginning is how can our center support professionals, consultants, administrators, school board members, and whatnot to be able to in turn support staff in the school, whether the teacher support staff, and of course, including parents, and then in turn would be supporting the child. I kind of call this the cascading hierarchy of support or of care. And so because we're a provincial resource, we don't have the pleasure to be able to work directly with you teachers in the classroom, but at least if we can try to reach to you through your consultants and professionals and administrators, that this will get to your way. And so there's actually going to be some more things developed at some point this year, at least with some of my colleagues at the ministry, where they want to look at not the content per se, but the l'accompagnement, the accompaniment. How do we go about supporting the
Implementation.
teacher? Yeah, exactly. So let's jump into the toolkit because that was the focus of the last year, and we had so much fun with the teachers. I think they really appreciated it. And it's, the kids were engaged when they were doing the activities with them. We got so many great pictures from that, which I haven't had a chance to put on the website yet, but and
It's
so we
coming.
wanted to share this with you. Martine, oh, before I go there, Martine mentioned that we wanted to start off with 12 or 13 books and ended up having 35 books. We couldn't stop. There were so many different good books out there. And so we wanted to make sure the books that we selected not only as much as possible that they were available both in English and in French, so we wouldn't have to duplicate the work separately, but that they were books that were easy to read for K4, K5, that were engaging, that were not there to, teach a lesson to the kids. It was more about being creative and explorative. There are these really fun books with these different characters, and some touch just emotional development, some touch just social development, and some touch both. And Yeah, I don't know what more to say about the books, but there's a lot of books out there. And oh, and we kind of focused on primary books, and then we added on additional books to those that take it that theme one step further. So you'll notice when you're going to open the activity cards linked to the book that will have at the top of the card the other books that are similar to that one if you want to continue further on that theme. So the way that we designed the toolkit is that you start from the book. Now, ideally, your school library, and that's another criteria that we thought of. We were trying to make sure that these books were already available in your school library, and if they're not, if there's a way to request for those to be purchased, you may have them through that platform, online platform that some of your schools have access to. And so based on the book, you have the activity sheets or the activity cards. We actually have two formats where the sheet has everything on the one page. And then the activity cards is we actually added extra links and considerations. So everything's there on the card. You don't need to look for the activities. And then, of course, some activities we couldn't find online. So what we ended up doing is we
We
developed some
created them.
activities. Yeah,
We
Martine is
created
really
them.
creative.
If you can't find them, you make them.
Mm. Yeah, Martine's really been instrumental in helping us develop some of these activities, so thank you so much for that. So basically, the activities are games and activities that are for both indoors and or outdoors. Some can be used for both places, some are just for indoors, others just for outdoors. These are activities that are adapted for each tier of support, so you do not need to take a different book or a different activity. You've got the exact same activity that you can use for your whole class. And then if you want to take it one step further, either with the support of a support staff that could take a small group of kids and then do the activity again or one step further, or do it one-to-one with a child in another space in the school. So we explain how to be able to do it for everybody to some to few. Of course, we continue on to have a parent component. So not only do we have those resources I showed to you, but we also have within the books either an invitation for parents to come to class and they can help be an extra a set of hands to help the teacher in doing a more difficult activity that needs support, or it could be that you send something home that the parents can do one step further with their child. And so you'll see at the end of these different activity sheets, it says at the top parent component. One of the things we wanted to be really mindful about, because we kept on saying since the beginning of this presentation that 4 and 5-year-olds are not the same. They're at different places developmentally, and we need to have our expectations adjusted accordingly. And so at the back hand side of the activity cards, you will have a paragraph or two, depending on the activity, of things to consider if you are working with 4-year-olds instead of 5-year-olds. And if you have children with special needs or that you have a child at tier 3, excuse me, what are certain elements that you should consider specifically to that activity at hand? Martin, I don't know if you want to speak to this slide.
Sure. So Catherine spoke how in part one of this whole project was that we had the pyramid of support. And so you've got the tier one, tier two, tier three that we saw on the website, and the activity sheets are set up. Again, I mentioned the colors before. So notice the colors of the arrows going down from tier one to there is that green with the tier one universal practices and the two and the three. So there are it's specifically set up so that you could read and see the flow of the intervention going from a whole group activity to it could be a smaller group activity if you're setting up to work in stations, and then also with the tier three. So some of them will be very similar, some of them will have very specific different things. And sometimes it's more of a time and in a space and the amount of the surroundings, the stimulation a child can handle. So it'll help you to see. And some of the feedback that we had from the teachers when we developed these last year was it was they were very excited about the flow and being able to see how you could have some kids in tier two that they could be part of the activity and then they could, switch and get more support. The other thing is that some children, like we mentioned earlier, they will grow at different rates during the year. So a child who is needing support at a tier two, like a handful of students in your group in the early fall, it doesn't mean that's where they're going to be all year. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And it might be certain types of activities they need more support, but other ones they do very well. It might even be that depending on the time of day when you do it, if you do morning or afternoon, will make a difference. So
Mm-hmm.
the 1, 2, and 3 here was really to show how we go from theory to application and blend all of that, the attachment, the neuroscience, all of that. It's all blended in together for you to have those components on the activity sheets. And the activity cards give you more details as to specifically how to play or do or the materials required for each of the activities that you select. And for each book, there are a number of different activities. The primary books have a lot. We really went in like a deep dive on those, but at the same time, each activity sheet could be seen as its own mini buffet. So you will not do all of those. But it
No.
could be that for one book, you pick one type of an activity. Another book, you will pick another. You may say, I want to do this again later in the year and do another activity with the same book. So it's not a problem to repeat a book in the year, but it's also not a problem to just do different things. So feel free to pick and choose. These are
Mm-hmm.
suggestions and a wide range, but it's really for you to be in the driver's seat, but to say, hey, this is what's available to me. So a lot of the thinking and doing has been prepared, put together, and everything that has a link for an activity, Catherine has linked it so you could then get the download for the materials that you would need to print and prepare.
Exactly. And we tried as best as we could for all of the materials to be free. Sometimes there's a dollar or two that needs to be spent on an activity. And so depending on your budget, feel free to pick and choose. But we tried as best as we can to have things either we developed ourselves or that we
Mm,
found for free.
yeah.
Now, I'm conscious of the time and I want to make sure I leave room for questions. These are just few examples of the books that we selected for emotional development. And one of the books I wanted to put in a special attention to, actually two books, is The Invisible String and The Kissing Hand. Given that we are at the beginning of the school year right now, these are two wonderful books to be able to introduce to your class. I don't know, Martine, if you want to speak a bit more to that, since you had an example in your mind
Sure.
of somebody you knew.
So if you're not aware with, I mean, many teachers already know these books, but the value and importance of doing like some early activities around priming attachment for the child to feel their attachment with mom and dad and coming to school and building an attachment with you. These are key books and how that is so emotionally significant for kids, but also for the adults. When parents are feeling that, the school is doing a really good job at connecting with their child, is then they feel more reassured and leaning forward and being very on board with you. So I would encourage you to have a look at those two activity sheets and to see if you haven't already planned something around that angle, is you can be adding these in the next couple of weeks, and it is completely okay to do a few different things in the same theme area. So your more
Hmm.
sensitive kids will really, you'll see a huge benefit. This is an investment in them really hooking into connecting with you, the parents connecting with you, and the child feeling safe coming to a big, new, strange place with lots of adults they don't know and kids they don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. So some of the themes that are covered, I won't go through them all. You do have access to a bigger version, by the way, of this handout. We put together a shorter version for the purpose of this hour, but you have on the, when you registered, you had a link to a handout much more detailed. You have the list of all of these themes. And so just to name a few, looking at naming and recognizing emotion, putting more focus on sadness, loneliness, and tears and body sensations and whatnot. These are just some examples for emotional development. For social development, these are a few examples of books. And another one at the beginning of the school year that could be a good one to start with is We Share Everything. This is a classic. I'm sure many of you know this book already. And it's kind of quite silly, and we've got some fun activities that comes along with it. And again, we've got some themes here for social development, like example, similarities and differences, conflict, feeling sorry, listening, following rules. And so these are just some examples. Um, Want to make sure to say a special shout out. We had a few staff. We were very, very lucky to be able to have a few teachers and professionals that work with special needs. And we were able to put together a section dedicated to special needs. We actually created a collection. And what we ended up doing one step further is just being sensitive to, how we can be flexible and adapt certain activities for that clientele, making sure that the accompaniment for social and emotional development is not just an activity, but it's something that is done throughout the day, every day. In terms of emotional regulation, that we're doing this together as a co-regulation, and that we're just being inclusive and sensory friendly in that approach. So you'll notice we don't have different books. We chose the exact same books, but there's less that we made specific for special needs that we took one step further. And in the other books that we did not include in the collection, we did put considerations for special needs in case you have one child with special needs in your class and that you want to do that book for the rest of the group. How could you make that consideration for this particular child?
Mhm.
Now, what we did with the teachers is we were trying to figure out, and this is just a suggestion of how we could put together a timeline. Given the buffet of books, how do we know which book to start with at the beginning of the year, and how do we, kind of put the books together from the beginning to the mid to the end of the year? So you have a document, I'll show it to you in a second on the website, by month, where we list the books, and some books come back that we suggest for to do them at the beginning of the year and repeat them later in the year. And so you have a timeline that is offered, and we also have one that is by theme. So I'll stop sharing this presentation to go on the website.
I think, Catherine, while you're getting us to the
Yeah,
website, I can just add that
please.
the timelines, the list of books, they've been regrouped so that you're working both social and emotional at different times. So we're not just focusing on one or the other, but it's one and the other.
Yes.
The other piece is that there are two documents of kind of like the book list that we'll call. One of them is the timeline. The other one is the whole collection that we have of suggested books, and that you will find other titles there that there aren't activity sheets for. There's just a few like that. But the reality was we didn't want to just copy paste and for it to be redundant. Okay.
Mm,
So when Catherine did the full list of books, and they're regrouped by theme. So basically any book that would not have an activity sheet, if you take one of the others from that category, you could use those activities for that book that doesn't have one. Because we wanted that the range that was there where it was different and it was interesting and interactive and different things. And you'll have a range of play, drama, dress up. You've got to play like music, indoors, outdoors, like it's a whole range. But we did not want to get into just copy pasting things to just make it
yeah,
look like there's more. Okay. So it's not that we've forgotten, but it's that you can pick from that category and make it
exactly.
your own. And again, this is not the end all be all. I mean, it's amazing. The amount is like, whoa, overwhelming. We're very excited. However, we know that you may have other books that you love, and that in whatever category they are, please go steal their activities and use them and have fun with them. I mean,
Exactly.
that's really, it's there to be used and enjoy with the children.
Exactly. Before I click onto the English page, for those that are wanting the French material, I'll go back to the French website for a second, just so you can know where to find the page. And by the way, don't feel like you need to kind of force yourself to remember. I made sure on the home page to put the links, so you've got that there already. But remember that under practices was what we looked at for the pyramid of support. Underneath tools, you will find emotional and social development. They're the first and the second one. And so if we go back to the English page now, again, remember practices is here for the K4, K5 practices. For the emotional and social development, it's underneath materials. And you've got emotional and social development. They're two separate pages. I didn't want to put them on the same because it would have been too long to
There's
scroll
so
and it would have been
much.
confusing. So if we go on emotional development, the pages look similar. They're just, one for each. And so what we did is, oh, by the way, this is the handout that I was mentioning that you guys had with the registration of this event. I put it here as well, the intro presentation, so you can go download it there. And then you've got the practices for emotional development. Here's the list of books by timeline, and you've got them also the same books by theme. And then I ended up putting together a grid just in case you want to work. I'll just open it for a second. If you want to work on expressing emotion, or you want to work on attachment and safety, that you don't need to look into every single links to try to figure out where they are. You have the list of the books with the activity, and it tells you which theme we're covering. So it will give you an idea of how many books and activities we have for that one specific theme. And so then it might help you to make decisions as to which books and which activities you want to do. Here we put the YouTube links for the read aloud. And these are meant for the parents, for you to share with the parents. Ideally, it'd be great for you guys to have the actual copies of the books to read with the kids. It makes a big, big difference to have the book you can read yourself versus just playing it onto the YouTube channel. But if the parents want to revisit that book at home, you've got both in English and in French, you've got the list of the YouTube links for the read aloud of that book. And what we ended up doing on top of that is, again, for parents, different editorials that for parents, so not for the kids, to parents to read with the kids, but for themselves on certain themes. So, for example, on naming and recognizing emotions, what are things that parents should be thinking about in terms of considerations and whatnot? And so you've got different editorials there for parents. Now, for the books, we tried to make it as simple as possible. You've got the picture of the book by category. I named all the categories there before. So you've got beginning of the school year, attachment, belonging, naming, recognizing emotions, and so forth. So you have all the different categories and the books per category that are there. And then you've got this specific section for special needs. And then I put on there, in case you don't want to look through each of the books, the some of the tools and games that we developed ourselves for indoor and for outdoor. We put them separately up here, so you can actually just use the activities without a book, even if you'd like. And then we have the section for parents and parent special needs. So I'll just click on one book to kind of give you an idea of what that could look like. So we'll go to the kissing hand.
Catherine, I'm just
Eh,
conscious of time.
oh shoot, yeah, okay. So just I'll just open one quickly. If you can open, come on.
So as you can tell, we're very excited. We've got lots to tell.
Yeah.
And we're
So
looking forward to having your feedback of trying this out, road testing more than what has already been done, and sharing feedback.
yes. So each page is the introduction page is similar, where you've got the book, whether it's available in English and or French or both, the themes that it's covering, if there's secondary books, the time of the year that you could read it. If it's part of the special needs collection, S is for social development. We've got an E for emotional development. Then we've got just suggestions for the reading with the group. You have some books have a bookmark, so you've got the questions there for the book with the bookmark. Then we thought it'd be easier for some of the longer books to have a table of content so you know what's in the document. And then you've got the activities with considerations. So I'll let you, and then of course in some of the books we've got the activities are linked inside. And some you've got I don't know if oh yeah. So this one we've got a scavenger hunt. That one we developed ourselves. You have the link. So if there's one from Teacher Pay Teacher that you want to download for free, you've got the link there. And just really quickly before I ask questions, social development, same layout. So the beginning's similar, and then you've got the books. You'll notice some of the books are the same for both social and emotional. All right, I'll stop sharing. I want to make sure we leave room for questions, comments, suggestions, concerns. Any thoughts? Anything that you guys can write in the chat, by the way. Of course, we're in webinar format, so you don't have access to your camera or your mic. You can write into the chat. Somebody said it's very cool. Impressive work. Good, I'm glad. I see the activity cards on the website, but I'm wondering where to find the activity sheets, the one pager. Great question. We are still finishing up the last touches on the activity sheets because there were some additions, and then we're going to create a bank of those sheets into one that you'll be able to download all together. So that's to come. That is to come. Yes, colossal work. Yes, absolutely.
But
And so like
highly
Martine,
enjoyed. Colossal work, but highly enjoyed. So we
yes.
really are very excited to have you use the material, give feedback. And I think my closing piece, Catherine, would be
Yes.
enjoy being with the children, be patient with them, and most importantly, be patient with yourselves. Teachers often
Mhm.
plan and want to do so many, many things and then get disappointed or frustrated because they can't get it all done. And I think one of the big observations and feedback from some of the teachers was when they set forth an activity and they'd planned a certain amount of time and the children were engaged and enjoying, and you saw the creative play just come out of them, and the teachers deciding to give more time to see what would happen. And they were amazed to see what unfolded and how the children took it further. So sometimes less is better, and giving more time and giving them that space to be able to express more. So don't be shy to alter the schedule. Don't be shy to give more time, and take take your own creativity in the direction it brings you with what you're doing and your students. So I wish you a wonderful year. Look forward to hearing feedback. And
Mhm.
please do share pictures or little videos or I mean, whatever ideas.
Would
Get
love
back to
that.
it. Get back to us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We wish you a great start of the year, and there'll be more tidbits around, as the school year advances. I know that there are certain school boards that have already requested for our center to do an additional presentation later in the year. And so watch out for that at your board. You may see me and again present on preschoolers. And so looking forward to that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just want to make sure there aren't any leftover questions. We're good. Okay, so I'm going to stop the event. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a great kickoff to the year.
Mm-hmm.